The Frankfurt School, or Institute for Social Research, set up by a group of Marxist intellectuals in Germany in 1923, affiliated to the University of Frankfurt and independently of the Communist Party, which has been influential in the development of Marxist theory ever since. The founding of the institute marked the beginning of a current of Marxism divorced from the organized working class and communist parties, which over the decades merged with bourgeois ideology in academia. Henrik Grossman, quote, "What was the year 1929 in the USA and the year 1931 in Germany and England, if not a giant breakdown? The working class was not prepared for this. It did not have a Lenin who awaited and worked towards such a moment. Rather, for decades, it heard from Hilferding and Hillenbauer that a breakdown was impossible. Only such a disorientation of the working class made it possible for the ruling class to overcome the panic and to survive the breakdown." End quote. Henrik Grossman. Henrik Grossman was born in Krakow in Galicia, the Austrian-ruled section of then-partitioned Poland. Active in the socialist movement in high school, he joined the Polish Social Democratic Party. At university, he became active in organizing Jewish workers and struggled against the opportunism and chauvinism of the PPSD. He helped lead a split of Jewish workers from the PPSD in May 1905 to form the Jewish Social Democrat Party of Galicia and was elected party secretary, occupying leadership positions for the next 3 years. With the defeat of the 1905 revolution and the subsequent decline in the working class movement, he left active politics and worked as a statistician and economist. After the war, he joined the Communist Workers' Party of Poland in 1920. Persecuted by the police and imprisoned for several terms ranging from 2 to 8 months, repression forced him into exile in Frankfurt at the end of 1925. He became associated with the Frankfurt Institute and wrote his major work on capitalist breakdown and related articles. He was forced into exile again in 1933, first to Britain and then in the USA. He returned to Germany in 1949, joining the Socialist Unity Party as professor of political economy at the University of Leipzig, where he died the following year. Note on his naming, Henrik Grossman is the name by which he was known in Poland, is the name used in those works whose preparation he oversaw. Henrik Grossman is an alternative rendering widely used in older editions and many commentaries. It is only used in this archive in bibliographical references. Walter Benjamin. The transformation of the superstructure, which takes place far more slowly than that of the substructure, has taken more than half a century to manifest in all areas of culture. The change in the conditions of production. Only today can it be indicated what form this has taken. And that was from the work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction in 1930. Walter Benjamin, he was a German Marxist literary critic. Born into a prosperous Jewish family, Benjamin studied philosophy in Berlin, Freiburg, Munich, and Bern. He settled in Berlin in 1920 and worked thereafter as a literary critic and translator. His half-hearted pursuit of an academic career was cut short when the University of Frankfurt rejected his brilliant but unconventional doctoral thesis, The Origin of German Tragic Drama, in 1928. Benjamin eventually settled in Paris after leaving Germany in 1933 after Hitler came to power. He continued to write essays and reviews for literary journals, but when Paris fell to the Nazis in 1940, he fled south with the hope of escape into the U.S. via Spain. Informed by the chief of police at the Franco-Spanish border that he would be turned over to the Gestapo, Benjamin committed suicide. The posthumous publication of Benjamin's prolific output won him a growing reputation in the later 20th century. The essays containing his philosophical reflections on literature are written in a dense and concentrated style that contains a strong poetic strain. He mixes social criticism and linguistic analysis with historical nostalgia while communicating an underlying sense of pathos and pessimism. The metaphysical quality of his early critical thought gave way to a Marxist inclination in the 1930s. Benjamin's pronounced intellectual independence and originality are evident in the extended essays of Ghosts, Elective Affinities, and the essays collected in Illuminations. The approach to art of the USSR under Stalin was typified, first by the persecution of all those who expressed any independent thought, and second by the adoption of socialist realism, the view that art is dedicated to the realistic representation of simplistic, optimistic proletarian values and proletarian life. Subsequent Marxist thinking about art has been largely influenced by Walter Benjamin and George Lukács, however. Both were exponents of Marxist humanism who saw the important contribution of Marxist theory in aesthetics in the analysis of the condition of labor and in the critique of the alienated and reified consciousness of a man under capitalism. Benjamin's collections of essays, The Work of Art in the Age of the Mechanical Reproduction from 1936, attempts to describe the changed experience of art in the modern world and sees the rise of fascism in mass societies as the culmination of a process of debasement, whereby art ceases to be a means of instruction and becomes, instead of mere gratification, a matter of taste alone. Communism responds by politicizing art, that is, by making art into the instrument by which the false consciousness of the mass man is to be overthrown. Max Horkheimer, self-awareness, quote, self-awareness in contemporary society is directly connected with belonging to some collectivity, to an age group or vocational group, and ultimately to the nation. The divergence between individual and group that is now disappearing continues to show up among stunted individuals, criminals, and people who can assert themselves only by opposition to everything else, end quote. From the feudal lord, customer, and specialist. Max Horkheimer is a German philosopher and social scientist, director of the Frankfurt Institute for Social Research from 1930 to 1958, close associate of Theodor Adorno, who mixed Marxism with influences as diverse as Schopenhauer, Dilthey, and Nietzsche and Freud. The Institute for Social Research was founded in 1923 by Felix Weil to be an independent academy and for Marxism intended to rival any university in the standards of scholarship, and the Institute carried out important research on the history and condition of the German workers' movement. It was possibly the first body to use opinion polls as a research tool. Others to be associated with the Institute, as well as Horkheimer and Adorno, included Leo Lowenthal, Raymond Aron, Erich Fromm, Herbert Marcuse, Walter Benjamin, and Ernst Krenek. After the 1923 defeat of the German Revolution, Horkheimer and other members of the Institute to some degree drew the conclusion that the working class could never be the vehicle for social change simply as a result of his position within the production process, and concluded that only the development of theory itself could be the scene of liberation. Horkheimer co-authored Dialectic of the Enlightenment with Theodor Adorno while in the U.S. during the 1940s. And his 1947 critique of instrumental reason is also widely read. In 1949, Horkheimer returned to Frankfurt and reestablished the Institute and retired to Switzerland in 1948. Enlightenment.